In the whole process of that year and a half, caught my ex-wife cheating on me. When I caught her, I was following her around for two
Oh
weeks, and I didn't tell
no.
anybody this. So you're like the first person you're like one of the first people that's ever heard this part of my story on this. Because I knew something was wrong, and you know how your intuitions and all that. And my buddy I hung out with, that I still know to this day, we were walking around one night, and this is the early 2000s. You know, you're able to go do stuff that you couldn't do today, walk around in town late at night and stuff like that, and not really get stopped by the cops or something. She sees this guy, and I've never met him before, and she got all excited, and my buddy's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and we're like, something's not jiving here. I'm like, well, she wouldn't come home for certain nights, and I'm like, well, where the hell are you at? What are you doing? You know, what's going on? So then my red flags are going up. So then I started following her around off and on. She didn't even know it. I was pretty slick about it, I'll say that. Not saying I'm proud of it, but it's set up for what was to come after. Within that time, I lost my job within that time because there was just a lot of things going on. So I wasn't focused on the things that I should have been focused on, you know, doing stuff in life. So within that 2 week span, I lost the job, caught her, and I'm heaving. I was about ready to heave a lot of stuff out the door that night because I'm like, what the hell? What did I do wrong? What accumulated this? What did I do?
How did you catch her? Do you mind if I ask? And thank you, by the way, for sharing this story. It's clearly still hard to talk about all these years later, and so I really appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah,
And you're
it's
going to be glad ultimately that you spoke about it. Like that's usually my experience with my guests that share something for the first time. It's like this scary thing that they didn't ever want to talk about, and then when you do, typically there's some relief. But I don't want to push your boundaries either. So if you're cool sharing how you caught her, but you certainly don't have to.
yeah. I had a little Chevette. You remember those cars, right? I
No,
used
no,
to.
what is that?
I remember a Chevette. You don't know what that is?
No, what is
That was
it?
an old Chevy car back in the '80s.
Okay.
It was a. I bought this car for like $50 off this guy I used to work with at the dealership.
You
Yeah,
bought it for 50
there
bucks?
was nothing wrong with it. Yeah, my brother would tell me, you know, before I get back to it, my brother always said this: you can stick me in a bottle full of nipples, he would come out with none, and I would come out with one.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was always the guy that would end up in the right place at the right time for some kind of deal. I don't know how, and it still happens too, and I can't explain it. But I remember she was babysitting somebody's kid, and they were friends. I'm like, well, you know, I'm gonna go check this out. So one night I drove up, parked down the street, walked up, and then I looked over in one of the windows. And I'm like, what are they doing? So the guy that she was messing with, they were going back and forth in each room. So I would switch from one window to another window, from one window to another window. And all of a sudden they meet up and start kissing. And I'm like, my blood was boiling. I'm like, well, you guys just got caught. And all of a sudden I see him turn around looking at the window like, oh shit. And she's the same way. And I'm like, you're done and you're dead.
Oh my
So
gosh.
she come running outside saying, well, this is the first time. And I said, that didn't look like the first time to me. I just got in the car and left. I said, you know, you got X amount of time to get your stuff, you know, go. I ain't got time for this.
And you were what, 22, 23?
23, if I remember right now.
Dude, the impact of that must have been so traumatic. To see it is traumatizing.
It was. I don't want to wish on anybody to catch somebody doing that. It was a kick in the dick. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was just like, you think there to yourself, like, how did I fail this? Why did I fail this? How did I fail my job that I just got let go from? How am I going to explain that? So that night, I went over to my buddy Steve's house, and he was living with his mom at the time. And a friend of mine, Eddie, was with him. And they were downstairs talking. I'm like, hey, guys, you know, I got to talk to you about something. Because I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what to do. Probably should have went and talked to my parents, but I did. You know, maybe I should have went and say, hey, I'm going through this. What do you guys think I should do? Well, I didn't. I went there. They had a half a bottle of Everclear and half a bottle of this peach liqueur. I don't know what it was. And I said, you know, I explained to them what happened, and they're all looking at me like, what? They didn't know what to say either. They're just like, what's going on? So I picked both of them up. I said, F it. Done. I just started drinking. That was the point and the turn right there that I said alcohol was the best way for me to check out. Just check out and be done and escape. That was my escape. The gym wasn't my escape no more. I just started going that less. Martial arts wasn't my escape anymore. Got away from that. Started practicing all these unhealthy habits. And I was on unemployment for probably 3 months because I knew how to find work. I'm a mechanic. I know how to wheel and deal and try to find something to make a couple bucks. It's not that, to me, it wasn't that hard. It's not. I said, you know what? I'm going to take a few months off. I'm going to try to regroup myself. But in the meantime, I didn't. I went to the bar with my buddies every Wednesday, every Friday. I started going to this one place here in town. I always went and drank outside of town where I lived at. I didn't drink in Ottawa where I lived at the time. I always went to LaSalle, this other town called LaSalle, Peru. It's two towns kind of mixed into one. I would always go out of town and drink. I would not drink in my own town. So there's a premise I'm setting up here. So, and I think some people in recovery that are alcoholic would understand. I think might get what I'm doing. I would always come over here because I felt more at home. I felt like I escaped from Ottawa. I escaped from this place. I'll go check out over here. So we would do that for 3 months, just party, 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 party. Well, there was one day where my parents came over to my house, and I had a table, an end table with 40s, all empty bottles, thinking it was a shrine. This was the best thing I thought it was in the world. And my dad walks in, he looks down, he goes, "What the hell's this?" "Oh, that's just nothing." I was trying to count it, discontent it, like, "Oh, that's nothing." "Well, why do you have all these empty bottles of liquor here?" And I'm like, trying to think of something real quick to say. And I'm like, "Well, I had a party last night and some people over here." "Well, they've been there for months." That was something where I thought was the best thing I could have a landmark of. Well, I felt really, really demoralized when my dad and mom saw it because I knew something was going on in their head. Like, something's not right here. Is he falling off the rails? Is he doing something he shouldn't be doing? Being that my dad's in recovery, he could see BS probably a mile away, seeing that. So that's where a lot of downward spiral was. I couldn't pay my bills on time. I was changing jobs a lot at that time because I thought somebody was out to get me at work. Like, this guy's making fun of me or he doesn't like me, so I'm going to go to this other job. So I would switch jobs like for a 2-year span or almost 3-year span there from 2003 to 2005. I would change probably 6 jobs.
Wow. Okay.
Easily.
I have a few questions here. So, what did you tell your parents about the divorce? Because I feel like your family is probably really important, like family values, because them seeing the bottles was so impactful on you. What did you tell them about the divorce? And were you afraid to tell your parents, "Hey, we're splitting up. It's only been a year and a half and we're divorcing"? What was their response? Like, what did you say?
I'm actually closer to my mom than my dad because he traveled a lot.
You told her the truth. You said she was cheating on me.
Yeah, I told her what was going on, at least my side of the story. I explained it to her. I probably could have said more. I probably could have asked more, but I didn't because I said, "Well, I got this. I can figure this out. I can figure all this out on my own. Don't worry about it. I'm a grown man." At least I thought at the time.
You mentioned some alcoholic behaviors that you look back on and you see now before you started drinking real heavily. Like, what kind of stuff? What do you mean?
Being very resentful, being very selfish, always has to be right. I have to be right. Couldn't trust nobody. Could not trust nobody. I couldn't even trust myself. I remember a saying I heard, "You can't trust yourself, you can't trust anybody else." And that stuck with me for a while. I heard that from some guy when I lived out on the East Coast. I think that stuck with me. I think that to me was somewhat of an alcoholic behavior.
Yeah. What do you mean by can't trust yourself? Like, you can't count on yourself to do the right thing? What is that? What does that mean?
I'm very hard on myself, so that's why I try to reinforce positive attitude every morning when I get up. Basically, can't count on things. I'm not accountable. Trying to explain it to the best way I can to have somebody understand. I just feel less than.
Like low self-esteem, basically.
Yeah. Sometimes, like a DJ mix, I put it out. I'm like, that sounds like shit. And everybody's like, "Dude, what is wrong with you? That is like the best thing I've heard in a while. Why aren't you going out doing this?" I'm like, "I don't know." And I do that. Sometimes I still do it today. So I got to be careful with that.
So your parents come over, they see all the bottles, and then you said things start to spiral. So what starts to happen from there?
Start doing the blackouts here and there. I didn't know how to pay bills with this shit. I always get the pink slip in the mail for the electric or the gas or this. I didn't have a house phone, so nobody couldn't get a hold of me. I wasn't prioritizing my money to the important things that should have been done, and I'd always try to get money from my parents to help pay a bill that I'm 2 months behind on, and then turn around, get a check, and then go party and go do this. It was insane. It was the most insane behavior I've ever thought I could ever do, because I always wanted to go out and try to be the center of the attention at places where I went. And I usually went alone. I would go to the bars alone a lot of times. My buddies were like, "Why are you going alone?" I said, "Because I want to. I want to be by myself." "Why didn't you ask me to go?" I'm like, "Well, you weren't there, so I went by myself." And I just check out. It was easy to do. It was easy to make friends with somebody sitting next to me paying for a drink or two, or buy the whole line down the bar, the same thing, you know. It was easy to do that.
So that's what you would do? You would buy drinks and stuff?
Sometimes, yeah, just to BS with people. And it was lonely. It was really lonely. I'll put it that way. I was in a place where I don't want to go back. Really. This is the first time around as far as the behavior. I started to, I was dating a lady at the same time too, and I put her through hell. I'll be honest. I put her through hell. It was her first major relationship too. And lo and behold, she gets stuck with a guy like me. And I'm like, you know, and I felt bad screwing it up on her. You know, we dated for like 3 years, and her mom, I don't think, really liked me because I couldn't manage my money worth of hell. I'd just be putting my money on other things I shouldn't have. You know, not saying, hey, you know, maybe we should get engaged. Maybe we should get married. Maybe we should, you know, this. You know, and her mom's like, well, you've been dating for 3 years. Why didn't you marry my daughter? I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to get married again. I think that upset her, but that was part of my 8th and 9th step love, so I'll explain too. So I put the bottle down first time in late '04. I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous because I started asking my dad about it. I'm like, Dad, I think I got a problem. So he's like, well, if you think you got a problem, well, you know, go to a couple of meetings and sit in and see if you think you belong there. And this is where pride and ego comes in. I used to work up in Joliet, Naperville, and this is a suburb area about an hour from where I used to live. So I would always go to meetings at a place in Joliet, and it was called the Bridge of Gap meeting. It was down in the basement, and they still had inpatient people coming in from, you know, detox and everything coming down. So I show up to my meeting and I'm bawling my eyes out, you know, I gotta stop and I gotta, you know, I just wanted to get somebody off my back, honestly. But I genuinely somewhat wanted to stop too, because I think I had an issue. Well, I did, but in my mind I thought. There's a gentleman by the name of Mike H., and I think he's passed away now. He's just like, hey, Chuck, can you sit back, shut up, and smile today? So I'm looking at him like, did this guy just say this to me? He's like, how old are you? I said, well, I'm 24. So I'm like, all right. So I sat down, and I listened to the meeting, and they asked me to talk, and I'm bawling my eyes out, like I said. I leave the meeting. So I stayed dry for 6 months. Didn't get a sponsor, didn't work the steps, didn't care to work the steps. And the girlfriend left me eventually anyways. So I stayed dry for that 6 months. I was at a party, and they had alcohol there, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, well, you know, what does it matter? I had one beer, and after I had it, I looked at myself, what in the hell did you just do? So this is where the seed was planted in that meeting, like, why did I just do this, even though I shouldn't have done it? So I still kept going back to that meeting after the fact, but never admitted to anybody around the table that I went back out and drank. So I hid that with myself, that guilt, up until I came back the second time around. But in that time, I'm not trying to jump around too much, but I'm trying to make context of it, that I got into bodybuilding more. So I've always loved it, and I've always wanted to do a bodybuilding show. So I was overweight, considerable. I'm like, you know what the hell? Let me try one. So I lost, 70 pounds total for the first show. So I did my first show in November of '05. Loved it. And I knew a lot of the promoters. I knew a lot of these people were from my dad, that he was in bodybuilding too. So he knew a lot of the judges and the people. And it's not because I wanted the judges to give me better scores or anything. I just knew everybody. So it wasn't like I was a first timer in there. So I'm like, well, if I do this, I can stay away from the drink. So I'm trading one addiction for another. I made bodybuilding an addiction, kind of an addictive thing, where if I stayed away from the drink and do this, I'll be all right. So I didn't do really any meetings, probably a year. And I would just show up to Joliet. I never went to any meetings down by where I lived at, because I didn't want nobody seeing my car out in front of an AA meeting at all. You know, maybe it was a stigma. Maybe to me, it was pride and ego. It wasn't really a stigma to me. It was just pride and ego. I don't want nobody to see it. I'm like, well, if they see that, then I'm a label as an alcoholic. So I did shows up until, and I did it my addiction and recovery too. And it was different because I dated another woman, and it was an unhealthy relationship. And I was always attracted to the unhealthy women for some reason, the crazy ones and the ones that just had didn't have their shit together, because I didn't. So I dated her, caught her messing with a
Oh my
man,
God.
and this was during a prep for a show, one of the shows I did 2 or 3 times in the fall. I was midway through prep, caught her cheating on me. I'm like, well, whatever, screw it. I know where else I can fall back to. So I focused everything on the gym from that point until I did the day of the show. Was it unhealthy? Probably. Was it healthy to a standpoint of me maybe, being healthy as a human? Yeah. But it wasn't healthy, man. It just wasn't. Because I had tunnel vision. I didn't want to look at anything else. I didn't care about my family. I didn't care about anything. I just looked at tunnel vision. I got to do this show. That's it. I don't care about anything else.
Well, I think a lot of us can make things sub addictions or whatever, a different addiction, a substitute addiction. And you're right, it can be healthy, and fitness is a common one. But what you just said, I think, is key. If it's impeding the progress of your life somehow, or if it's impeding your life, like your social connections, then that's how you know it's problematic, I think, right? If it's stopping you from, talking to someone, I think that's how you know, because you can get really obsessive about something and become successful at it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a maladaptive addiction. It can be something that you're a little bit obsessive about, but is it's preventing you from progressing in other areas of your life. And it sounds like for you, prep was at that time. And just so the audience knows too, because I know what prep is. Prep is this really intense period of time. It's very difficult, right? Where you're only eating like really specific things, and it's incredibly strict and restrictive around food. And it's just a really challenging thing to do, right?
It's taken me places I don't think a lot of people ever want to go. Mentally, where I thought I couldn't do certain things, I did it. I pushed my mental state, I pushed it to the extreme when I was in the gym, talking with others. I had a great workout partner, Skip, and that guy was such a good dude. He taught me some things that I probably should have listened to more, but I pushed myself mentally on things that physically I didn't think I could do. That makes sense. Push myself mentally to where certain things that I did want to eat, I didn't. So did I learn a lot from myself on that aspect? Yes. Oh yeah. I know where my threshold is today as far as certain things when it comes to that aspect. Would I go there again? I don't know. I've seen it. I know what it looks like. I know how it feels not like what people want. It's very uncomfortable.
How did you do in shows? Like, did you do okay?
My best one was third place. And I mean, I completed natural up to a certain extent. And I'm going to be honest, because this is an honest program. I didn't get into the injectable PEDs. I didn't like needles. I don't. For some strange reason, I got 2 tattoos and I don't like needles. It's just like me coming on here talking with you today. If I can go in front of 500 to 1,000 people in a Speedo, I think I can talk to somebody on a podcast. I mean, come on.
Totally.
So